Hi Russell, welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and this will be my first vlog post pretty much where I'll be discussing books that I'm reading this week or just books that I want to highlight and share with you. So let's get into it. The first one I'm going to talk about is this one here, which I've been reading for about a month now. That is Bret Easton Ellis's Luna Park. Came out around 2005-ish, I think. It was the second last book of fiction he published prior to Imperial Bedrooms, and since then he hasn't published anything apart from that essay collection a few years back. But I'm only a third of the way through this, and I think it might be my favourite thing he's ever written. I think it trumps anything he might have done in the 90s and even in the 80s, and that includes Less Than Zero, The Rules of Attraction, American Psycho, and even the short story collection The Informers. What's really fascinating to me is that the greatest character I think he's ever created might just be a fictionalized version of himself. I think there's something psychological going on there, and whether or not he's incorporated this type of psychological profiling into this book, I'm very curious about. I haven't actually seen any interviews with him in regards to this book. He hasn't given a lot of stuff with Luna Park. Unlike American Psycho, where you could find an interview with him and then there's hours and hours of footage of it. But I'm a third of the way through it, and for those of you who don't know, the first 30 pages of the book, roughly, is pretty much a biography of his college days leading up to the start of this book. But in those 30 pages, there are sections which are fictionalized, and it's up to you to decide what is real and what is not. And it details basically all the publications of his book and all the ups and downs that happened in between that, including past relationships, and in particular his relationship with his father, which was quite hostile, to say the least. He didn't seem to get along well with him. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. The book then transcends it, and it leads to him moving into a somewhat suburban life on the eve and throughout Halloween, pretty much. This book takes place over the course of Halloween, and I've only read up to the section pretty much where Halloween starts, so it's pretty much going by day basis, and you get a lot of his inside thoughts and how pretty much panicky and well, I can't think of another word, but he is a disgusting individual, but he's also humane in a way as well, so you can sort of relate to him a little bit. But mostly what you get is just how paranoid he is, and therein lies the themes pretty much of this book, and I think this book is slowly transcending into horror. The last chapter that I read about half an hour ago, there is an element of horror in there, and almost like a haunted house type thing. So I'm very curious to see where this book goes. As it stands, I'm really enjoying Luna Park quite a lot more than The Informers. So yep, that's Luna Park. This one here is Rabbit Run by John Updike. I actually picked this up in a secondhand bookstore, almost tucked away in the city. You almost couldn't find it, and it's so compressed, so cramped that with each individual aisle to look for the books, only one person can fit in there at a time, and so you really have to dig in and try and find all this stuff. And there's a section particularly for hardcovers, and this one here is it's not a first edition, but it's a replicant of it's a re-release of the first edition. It's got the same sort of cover and everything. And I've never actually read John Updike before, so I'll be curious to see how this goes. He's got quite a lot of admirers and a lot of people who claimed him to be one of the American greats of the latter half of the 20th century. Many people who consider him to be just a phenomenal writer. People such as Mary McCarthy and Norman Mailer have praised particularly Rabbit Run as a wonderful book, and it's a short book as well. It's like 200 pages, so I should be able to get through this quite quickly. I do intend on reading this sometime soon. I still got to get through quite a lot of other stuff, including finishing off my Bret Easton Ellis collection. After that, I can read Imperial Bedrooms, and then even the essay collection. I'll be done with Bret Easton Ellis. I would have read everything up to that point, but I will find time for Rabbit Run. Next one is the new Jonathon Franzen Crossroads. Yet another thick book, over 500 pages, and this is also a signed copy. I never thought I'd actually get a signed copy by him, so that's something. Yeah, this is my first signed copy ever of anything. and I don't know anything more about it. The first time I read Jonathon Franzen was back in 2016, and it was The Corrections. And I like that book quite a bit. The way it zooms in on each individual character involved in that family and then spends the next 80 or so pages pretty much detailing their life up to that certain point where they all congregate again. Very meticulous writing and very, very punchy and very good. Great writing, in fact, some of it. Obviously, people will find some characters more likable than others. I can't remember much from The Corrections because it's been quite a while since I read it. But I quite like the sisters storyline. But other than that, I've also got Freedom, and I'm pretty sure I have Purity around here somewhere, although that one gets a little less regarded than the rest. But as it stands, from what I've seen of the reviews of late, this Crossroads seems to be a step back in the right direction for him, and I believe it's going to be part of a series of books that he will release that are tied together. This is book one. So yeah, that's Jonathon Franzen's Crossroads. The next big one, Karl Knausgaard, The Morning Star, his fiction book. I didn't even know this was coming out. I didn't even know it came out. I just walked into the bookstore one day and was like, oh shit, there it is. So I picked it up. I know nothing about him other than the fact that he has been called time and time again as the Norwegian Proust, and the fact that in Norway, which has a population of over 5 million, apparently something like a tenth of the population owns a copy or one of the copies of the My Struggle series, the one that made him into a literary superstar. So that basically means that 10% of the population in Norway owns My Struggle by Knausgaard, which means he's just a mega superstar over there in Europe. And it seems to have taken hold in places like America too. I've seen plenty of YouTubers who talk about this book as one of the greatest reading experiences they've had of the last 10 years, maybe even of their lives. I will get around to My Struggle one day, but right now I think this will be a good jumping on point into his work. I'm curious to see how he is as a writer. Anyone out there who's read his work, let me know what you think, particularly of the My Struggle series, because I'm very curious about it. But as it stands, this piece of fiction here, another thick book, so it's going to take me quite a while to read it as well, but I will get to this. In fact, I want to get to this one after I finish Bret Easton Ellis. I'm very curious to see how he goes. So yeah, very exciting to read this one. I'll be very excited to read it. All right, the next one is this pretty boring cover, but nonetheless it's cheap anyway because it's a Penguin Classic edition, but it's Kingdom of Heaven by Hunter S Thompson. Hunter S Thompson I've been a massive fan of ever since Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I read that a few years ago, and it's constantly been in the top 10 books. It might not be in the top 10 books, but it's in the top 10 reading experiences of my life. Something that you can't not praise it, because there's so many great nuggets of writing in there, particularly what is considered the wave speech. Everyone knows the wave speech. It was even narrated by Johnny Depp in the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, when he's talking about the counterculture of the 60s and how it ended up failing into the 70s, and particularly the greed is good 80s. But after reading that, I read The Rum Diary, which I liked quite a bit. I don't think it's as good. And now I've gone and picked up Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which I hear is quite a fascinating piece of non-fiction. And now I've got the autobiography, which I hear is a great piece of work, and one of the last ones, if not the last one he did before he died. So yeah, there's that one there. I'm not sure which one I want to get to first, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail or Kingdom of Fear. But for someone who's had such a bombastic life, yeah, bombastic would be the right word to describe it, I think this will be a hell of a book to read. So that's Kingdom of Fear. The next one is a book that I bought a year ago and I accidentally threw it out, so I had to go out and buy it again, and that is Malcolm Lowry's Under the Volcano, considered a major piece of work of its time, and is one of only two books I think that have been released, two books that he wrote, but the other one is not as highly regarded. This one here is generally considered in the top 100 books of the 20th century. With strong writing. I only read the first 50 pages. I tried to read this last year after a 12-hour shift when I finished at 1 a.m. So I thought, I'll give this a shot. And it's not light reading when you're reading it after midnight. I mean, especially that first chapter. But everyone's telling me that after that first chapter, it gets easier because it basically follows each chapter after that represents 1 hour in the last day of the console's life. So it's considered sort of Faustian as well. I read this wonderful article by Anthony Burgess, who described Under the Volcano as a Faustian masterpiece. So that sounds fascinating. I really want to get to that. And anyway, I don't know much more about it. I know Charles Bukowski hates it, but he hates a lot of things. He's a very critical man, especially when he's drunk. But I know a lot of people out there who praise this to the top of Mount Everest, pretty much higher than that. A lot of people who love this book. I can't write it off, and I'm really curious to read it and see how it goes. So yeah, Under the Volcano. And the last one is actually a book I have read. Now, I don't think I'll ever do a review on it, but I want to give some time to it because I think it is possibly the most maligned book ever in terms of what I've read. I've never read a book which has been constantly shot down as much as this one has, and that is the recently released, it came out about a year ago, but it's Jim Carrey's Memoirs and Misinformation. A truly misunderstood book. It's a short book, you can get through it within a weekend if you really wanted to. But basically the problem is, I've seen a lot of reviews, and one of them, especially on Goodreads, it's hilarious reading the reviews on Goodreads. Some of them say, oh, what the F did I just read? That sort of thing. Here's the problem. I think a lot of these people went and bought this book and read it thinking it was a memoir, thinking it was autobiographical. Here's the thing, it's not. It's just as much a memoir as Luna Park is. It's mostly fiction. I'd say it's 90 to 95% fiction, and what you're given is little sections in the book which detail parts of Jim Carrey's real life, and so it's up to you to sort of pull them apart and put together a cohesive narrative about Jim Carrey's life away from the fictional narrative, especially in the final third. I won't give it away, but it goes sci-fi by the end of it, and almost philosophical in a way as well. In fact, I consider the end of the book to be, someone compared it to the ending of Truman Show, which is fascinating, especially when you get the whole boat thing going on. But there are sections such as his relationship with Rodney Dangerfield, which comes into play later in the book, and the fact that he sees himself as a washed-up star looking to get a big break. For example, at the start of the book, he meets up with Charlie Kaufman and is talking about making a movie where he basically plays Mao, the communist leader of China. So there's things like that going there. It's also a very funny book. There's lots of stuff going on here, and it name drops celebrities left, right, and center. So if you're going to read it, please don't read it thinking it's going to be your deep dive into Jim Carrey's life, but rather look at it as just this wacko, almost gonzo style of fiction telling that contains glimpses of his life. Please don't go into this thinking it is non-fiction. Unfortunately, that seems to be the way it's going, because when I went and bought this at a pretty prestigious bookstore in the city, I live in Perth, so this one's located just outside the city. But I thought they'd be able to pick up on it, but they had that in the autobiography section, and it made me laugh. I should have told them that it's fiction. Yeah, but other than that, yeah. So that's my collection there. This will be my first video vlog. If there's anything there that you like, let me know what you think it is. I'm also on Instagram at The Reading Fabricator, so just look that up on Instagram, and feel free to send me a message or comment on stuff. I'm fairly new. Yeah, all good. See ya.